The word secrecy is repugnant in a free and open society, and we are, as a people, inherently and historically opposed to secret societies, to secret oaths, and to secret proceedings.
I think a new world order is emerging.
An inside job? How dare you? How dare you?
To create, so to say, mass-produced models of human beings arranged in some kind of a scientific caste system.
We shall go on to the end. We shall fight with growing confidence and growing strength in the air. We shall never surrender.
Good day, everybody. This is UCY.tv with the Solvinur Event. I'm your host, Walter, coming to you from the Netherlands, where it is 4 p.m., 10 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. It's the 4th of June, 2016. Welcome, everybody. Check out the websites ucy.tv, reallibertymedia.com, where Fridays 11 p.m. you can hear nice music and commentary from Grimner at the Freakers Ball, so check it out. Then there's freedomsnetwork.com. It's kind of like a Facebook thingy, but without the crap you get from Facebook. And I'm on there too. So check that out, freedomsnetwork.com. In the chat room, there's a couple of people there. Welcome, everybody. Captain Gringo and Grump and Hopper and Juana, Jules, Matty Clues and Vince and Tuanons. So today we should be continuing with Tragedy and Hope Made Easy, or Tragedy and Hope 101, from stopthelie.com. You can also get there via tragedyandhope.info. I hope you all have something to drink. I've got some tea here. So let's see what we get today. We were at a side note in chapter 8, a little bit further than halfway down. Side note. It would be bad enough if the network limited its policy of employing terrorists and propping up ruthless dictators to just Western Europe. But that, of course, would be ridiculous. The Shah in Iran, Augusto Pinochet in Chile, the military junta in Argentina, each of these regimes brutalized their citizens with torture and murder. Each of these regimes was brought to power by the network. Worse still, they represent only a few of the proven regime change actions conducted by the network and its instrument in recent history. So regime change actions is 21, And this is a list apparently available at Wikipedia. Syria 1949, Iran in 53, Guatemala in 54, Tibet 55 to 70s, Indonesia 58, Cuba 59, Democratic Republic of Congo 60 to 65, Iraq 60 to 63, Dominion Republic 61, South Vietnam 63, Brazil 64, Ghana 66, Chile 70 to 73, Argentina 76, Afghanistan 79-89, Turkey 1980, Poland 1980-81, Nicaragua 1980-90, Cambodia 1980-95, Angola 1980s, Philippines in 86, Iraq 1992 to 1996, Afghanistan 2001, Venezuela 2002, Iraq 2002 and 3, Haiti 2004, Gaza Strip 2006 present, Somalia 2006 and 7, Iran 2005, present Libya 2011, Syria 2012. That's at wikipedia.org. Covert United States foreign regime change actions. All right. These acts of aggression against national sovereignty send a crystal clear message to any leadership that dares to disobey. Resist, and the consequences for you and the people of your country could be very dire. Here again, the Gladio coup in Greece provides some insight. In 1964, prior to the coup, the Greek ambassador had rejected network demands to divide the island nation of Cyprus. Infuriated, President Lincoln warned, "Then listen to me, Mr. Ambassador. Fuck your parliament and your constitution. America is an elephant. Cyprus is a flea. Greece is a flea. If your prime minister gives me talk about democracy, parliament and constitution, he, his parliament and his constitution may not last very long." That's 22 and 22, it says NATO's secret armies, page 219. In 1967, after some additional disagreements with the network, Greek Gladio carried out Johnson's threat. And that's also in NATO's secret armies, page 220. Although Operation Gladio was exposed more than 20 years ago, most public officials still aren't ready to admit that the Gladio armies facilitated coups, carried out terrorist attacks, or sought to provide a strategic direction to the outrages. To be fair, there isn't much of an incentive for them to do so. Since we still live in a network-dominated world, such unflattering statements could bring a wide range of consequences. Everything from a ruined career to torture to a bullet in the head. 24. In NATO's secret armies, 24 this is, Gansar covers a number of individuals who were assassinated because they threatened the Gladio program. Here are a couple examples. Renzo Roca, who participated in the Gladio silent coup in Italy, agreed to cooperate with investigators, but was assassinated the day before his testimony, reference pages 71 and 72 of NATO's secret armies. Major Sam Ersever wrote a book under a fake name that openly discussed the false flag and other crimes that he committed in conjunction with Counter-Guerrilla, the Turkish Gladio army. Shortly after its publication, he was tortured and shot in the back of the head. That's in pages 240 and 41. However, that is not to say that all public officials have turned their backs on the evidence and remained silent. One of the more damning indictments came from an Italian investigation in 2000. A 2000 Senate report stated that those massacres, those bombs, those military actions had been organized or promoted or supported by men inside Italian state institutions and, as has been discovered more recently, by men linked to the structures of United States intelligence. According to The Guardian, the report claimed that US intelligence agents were informed in advance about several right-wing terrorist bombings, but did nothing to alert the Italian authorities or to prevent the attacks from taking place. 25, and that's at Wikipedia, Operation Gladio. In 1990, the European Union Parliament sharply condemned NATO and the United States in a resolution for having manipulated European politics with a stay-behind armies. 26. That's also in NATO's secret armies, page 256. The Parliament called for a full investigation. But the political will to get this done, or maybe the political power to get this done, has yet to materialize. Sadly, the European Parliament isn't alone in its lack of resolve. Out of the 20 countries affected by Gladio, only 3, Italy, Switzerland and Belgium, have bothered to conduct a parliamentary investigation. During the Swiss investigation, Colonel Herbert Elboth, former commander of P-26, the Swiss secret army, sent a confidential letter to a member of the Defense Department declaring that he was willing to reveal the whole truth. Soon thereafter, Elboth was found stabbed to death with his own military bayonet. 27, that's NATO's secret armies, and the Wikipedia link, the assassination of Herbert Elboth. The investigation continued but only yielded a heavily redacted report that said in part that the secret army was without political or legal legitimacy and that it worked closely with the British Secret Service, who provided training in combat, communications and sabotage. 28. That's in the Wikipedia. Project-26, the Cornu Report, C-O-R-N-U, Cornu Report. The investigation continued, but only yielded a heavily redacted report that said in part that the secret army, yeah, that's what I just read, this fell far short of what might have come to light if not for Elboth's death and its predictable chilling effect on witnesses and parliamentarians. The Belgian inquiry yielded even less information. Hamstrung from the start by the unwillingness of witnesses to disclose what they knew and made worse by the government's insistence that the Commission operate behind closed doors, unlike normal parliamentary inquiries, public and press access to information proved insignificant. In the end, the inquiry resulted in the preparation of new legislation governing the mission and methods of the Belgian State Security Service and Belgian General Information and Security Service. 29. That's at Belgian Stay Behind Network at Wikipedia. For lack of a better word, it amounted to a whitewash. Maybe Switzerland and Belgium are fleas. Maybe the EU and all of the other nations affected by Gladio are fleas. Maybe these European leaders are so afraid of the network's elephant that they cannot effectively do their job. But we can't just blame the European leaders for their lack of courage. How many US leaders have called for an investigation into Gladio? Have you ever even heard the word Gladio leave the lips of any US representative? It's likely that less than 1% of the US population has heard of Operation Gladio. Even fewer could explain its undeniably anti-democratic and illegal influence on sovereignty. But since the network is strongest in the United States, a lack of mainstream coverage and knowledge is predictable. The media, the public schools, the government, all of these instruments constantly profess the sanctity of justice, freedom, and democracy. If US citizens were to get a good look at what their rulers will do to maintain control overseas, they might just start looking into what they will do to maintain control at home. They might just ask themselves, if these criminals will lie, cheat, steal, torture, maim and murder to control fleas, what will they do to maintain control of their elephant, their most cherished and powerful instrument? Final note. As early as 1991, the United States National Security Archive and at George Washington University filed a Freedom of Information Act request regarding the CIA's role in Operation Gladio. In 1995, the Italian Senate filed a FOIA request regarding Operation Gladio and the assassination of Prime Minister Aldo Moro. In 1996, Oliver Rathkorp of Vienna University filed a FOIA request regarding Gladio's role in Austria. In 2001 and beyond, Daniel Ganser has filed FOIA requests regarding the CIA's role in Gladio. In each instance, the CIA has rejected the requests with the standard reply of, the CIA can neither confirm nor deny the existence or non-existence of records responsive to your request. In 2006, the State Department tried to dismiss the mountain of evidence presented by Ganser in NATO's secret armies by challenging the authenticity of one very damning document he presents in the book. That's at 30. Westmoreland Field Manual. That's at wikipedia.org. It's a press release. United States Department of State, 2006-01-20. Retrieved 2007, June 24th. A 30-year-old Soviet forgery has been cited as one of the central pieces of evidence for the false notion that Western European stay-behind networks engaged in terrorism, allegedly at U.S. instigation. This is not true, and those researching the stay-behind networks need to be more discriminating in evaluating the truthworthiness of their source material. That document, FM 30-31B, is similar to the Operation Northwoods in its shocking content, but worse because the false flag operations described were actually carried out by members of the secret armies. The document was first discovered by a journalist in Turkey 17 years prior to the public admission of Gladio. That journalist was disappeared before he could provide additional details. In 1976, after the fall of the Franco-Gladio dictatorship in Spain, excerpts of the document were published in Spanish press, and in 1978 excerpts were also published in Italy. 31, NATO Secret Armies, page 297. End note 43. The US government responded promptly with the help of a KGB defector to declare the document a forgery. However, the discovery of the early 1990s of Operation Gladio in Europe led to renewed debate as to whether or not the manual was fraudulent. In 1992, the former deputy director of the CIA, Ray Klein, confirmed this is an authentic document, and Licio Gelli, believed to be a major player in Italian Gladio, stated bluntly, "The CIA gave it to me." 33, that's at Wikipedia, Westmore Field Manual. And in NATO Secret Armies, pages 234-235. For more information on Operation Gladio, there's a link at stopthelie.com. Tragedy and Hope Made Easy. NATO's Secret Armies, Operation Gladio and Terrorism in Western Europe. You can go there if you wish. Okay, so that's the end of 8, 9, Realpolitik revisited, I mean. Let's see if there's references. Yes. Okay. So, chapter 9. Realpolitik revisited. Through the philosophy of realpolitik, though the philosophy of realpolitik was briefly covered in chapter 1, and though everything written to this point demonstrates the network's devotion to its principles, nothing captures the cold and calculating nature of its adherents like the false flag operation. Any willingness to engage in these ruthless deception provide definitive proof of an abnormal sociopathic disregard for ethical consideration. Normal human beings accept a nearly universal maxim that morality determines whether an action is right or wrong. Practitioners of realpolitik, on the other hand, unapologetically reject this maxim. In their view, right and wrong are measured only in results. If they succeed in securing their objective, what they have done is right. If they fail in securing their objective, what they have done is wrong. They see themselves as realists and dismiss those who criticize the immorality of their actions as impractical fools. If forced to do so, the realist might offer a moral justification for their immoral actions. 1. And then at 1 it says, as noted in Chapter 1, Kissinger and other practitioners of realpolitik claim that their actions cannot be judged as immoral because they are performed in service of the highest good, preservation of the state. But since the state is nothing more than those among them who direct the resources and policy of government, their actions are performed in service of their own power and ambition. But the offer is insincere right there. Offer of moral justification. Might and manipulation have led them to the apex of power, and, as such, they have no incentive to question their approach. They are supremely arrogant. They think and behave differently than you and I. We must be aware of this. In this final chapter, I hope to remove any doubt about the mindset of those we're up against. Carr, this is the next heading, Carr, Kissinger, FDR, and Churchill. Perhaps you've heard the joke, if you look up the definition of evil, you'll see a picture of, enter name here, prominently displayed at the top of the page. Well, it's no joke to say, if you look up the definition of realpolitik at Wikipedia, you'll see Henry Kissinger and E.H. Carr listed as two prominent practitioners. Since Carr is unknown to most, let's begin with him. E.H. Carr was a highly influential British historian and member of the network, who believed it was his role to work out the basis of a new international order. As a realist, Carr considered the Soviet Union's collectivist totalitarian system of control far superior to the individualism practiced in the West. In fact, he praised Karl Marx for emphasizing the importance of the collective over the individual. That's at the Anglo-American Establishment, page 258. Carr described realism as the acceptance that what exists is right. He argued that in realism there is no moral dimension, and that what is successful is right, and what is unsuccessful is wrong. As an example, he supported the Bolshevik revolution based on the grounds of realpolitik. In his 1942 book, Conditions of Peace, Carr argued that it was a flawed economic system that had caused World War II, and that the only way of preventing another world war was for Western powers to fundamentally change the economic basis of their societies by adopting socialism. In 1945, during a lecture series entitled "The Soviet Impact on the Western World," Carr argued that the trend away from individualism and towards totalitarianism is everywhere unmistakable, that Marxism was by far the most successful type of totalitarianism, and that only the blind and incurable ignored these trends. Carr claimed that Soviet social policies were far more progressive than Western social policies, and argued democracy was more about social equality than political rights. Yeah, so see, you can discuss this whole left-right paradigm politic field until you're dead. It's useless. It's like, well, it's not like, it's not a good analogy, but it's like trying to shape shadows on a wall. That's what you get when you accept authority. Regarding the more progressive policies and social equality under the Soviet system, quickly provide some insight. For communism to work in Russia, the Bolsheviks believed that the country needed to be industrialized at breakneck speed, whatever the waste and hardships. This meant that the goods produced by the peasants must be taken from them without any economic return, and that the ultimate in authoritarian terror must be used. All peasants who resisted were treated with violence. Their property was confiscated, they were beaten or sent into exile, and many were killed. This process, known as the liquidation of the gulags, affected 5 million gulag families. That's K-U-L-A-K. The ordinary Russian had inadequate food and housing, was subject to extent rationing, and was reduced to living with his family in a single room, or even in many cases to a corner of a single room shared with other families. The privileged rulers and their favorites had the best of everything, including foods and wines, the use of vacation villas in the country, the use of official cars in the city, the right to live in old Tsarist palaces and mansions. Public discontent and social tensions grew, the use of spying, purges, torture and murder increased all out of all proportion. Hold on, guys. By the middle 1930s, the search for saboteurs and for enemies of the state left hardly a family untouched. Hundreds of thousands were killed, frequently on completely false charges, while millions were arrested and exiled to Siberia or put into huge slave labor camps. In these camps, under conditions of semi-starvation, and incredible cruelty, millions toiled. Estimates of the number of persons prior to 1941 vary from as low as 2 million to as high as 20 million. The majority of these prisoners had done nothing. They consisted of relatives, associates, and friends of persons who had been arrested on more serious charges. Many of these charges were completely false, having been trumped up to provide labor in remote areas, scapegoats for administrative breakdowns, and to eliminate possible rivals in the control of Soviet system. That's all from Tragedy and Hope. Carr not only admired the greater social equality that citizens enjoyed under the Soviet regime, he argued that China was much better off under the leadership of Mao Zedong. Mao, of course, was the network's most successful monster of all. He murdered between 18 million and 32 million human beings during his collectivist Great Leap Forward. Coercion, terror, and systematic violence were the very foundation of the Great Leap Forward, and it motivated one of the most deadly mass killings of human history. That's at Wikipedia, Great Leap Forward. Needless to say, Carr was also an enthusiastic supporter of the Hitler Empowerment Project. Germany under Hitler, Russia under the Bolsheviks, and Stalin, China under Mao, they all share the one characteristic that underpins the realist political philosophy: might makes right. Side note: any political system that subordinates the rights of the individual to some greater good, like the collective, is irresistible to a realist. That's because it not only empowers the realist, but it conceals their power grab and blatant hypocrisy in the process. Consider the absurdity of following scheme. By loudly condemning the selfishness of the evil individual and by praising the selfless virtue of the so-called collective, realists can build a system that, far from being administered by or for the benefit of the collective, transfers nearly absolute power to a handful of most dishonest, selfish, and evil individuals that realism can produce. While Carr overlooked the network-sponsored horrors of Marxism, Nazism, and Maoism, he continued to enthusiastically denounce the injustices of individualism in the Western world. So what exactly was he up to? Carr either suffered from an incurable case of intellectual inconsistency, or he was a very bold practitioner of realpolitik, or maybe it was a little of both. All that's certain is, if we agree to surrender our individual political rights, as men like Carr would have us do, the network will gladly construct the basis of a new international order for us to enjoy. Its members will fulfill their long-standing promise of social equality for all. Then we can finally live in a world where everyone is equally powerless to resist their sociopathic conspiracies. Oké dan. This brings us to the next heading. A pretext for every policy. Speaking of sociopathic conspiracies, Operation Gladio demonstrates just how far the network's realists were willing to go in order to subvert the democratic process in Europe. By using the threat of communism, which they nurtured, and terrorist attacks, which they facilitated, these skilled practitioners of real politics successfully manipulated everyone involved. The Gladio operatives, the citizens, the government, and the media. First, the network recruited a handful of Nazis, terrorists, and other hardcore criminals. That's in see NATO's secret armies for the rogue gallery of characters recruited and employed by the CIA and NATO during Gladio. Alright, so these handful of, and told them that to help fight communism they would be armed, paid and protected as they operated above the law. These Gladio operatives proceeded to commit acts of terrorism against innocent people, which predictably drove citizens to turn to the state for greater security. Hey there, Iota. Unaware of Gladio, well-meaning government officials and reporters accepted and repeated the lie that communists were behind the murders. This lie, backed by public fear and outrage, was used to increase the power of the state and crack down on individuals identified as communists or communist sympathizers. Any politician, citizen, or group of individuals who challenged the network's agenda could easily be smeared with these labels. Each step of the way, the communist threat provided a single pretext for the network's brazen global attack on national sovereignty. If this threat didn't exist, then they would have needed to create it. Unfortunately, this tactic of creating pretexts in the form of an enemy, a crisis, or an attack, or all of the above, remains incredibly effective. The average person is unlikely to suspect, let alone accuse, their own government of doing something so vile. Not only because it exceeds the socially acceptable limits of distrust, but because the truth at first is psychologically intolerable. But these mental barriers must be overcome. If they aren't, realists within the network will continue to employ false flags and similar deceptions. They will continue to do so for the simple reason that these tactics work. In closing, we'll expand on this idea of creating pretexts, starting with Henry Kissinger's take on the matter. It brings us to the next heading. Pawns in the Great Game. The US elephant serves no useful purpose to the network if the traditionally isolationist American people can maintain control of that elephant. Sadly, Americans have yet to realize that what they want is secondary in importance to what the network decides they shall have. And this is especially true when it comes to war. Working backward from Vietnam to World War II and then World War I, this becomes abundantly clear. In each case, the American people were lied to. They were told what they wanted to hear, as policymakers secretly conspired against them. Beginning with Vietnam, Kissinger concedes that the pretext for sending 55,000 Americans to their death, the Gulf of Tonkin attack, was based on a full presentation of the facts. However, he minimizes the relevance of the deception by saying it really wasn't a major factor in the Americans' commitment to ground combat in Vietnam. While President Johnson assured the public that he wasn't seeking a wider war, the exact opposite was true. 14. It's at Wikipedia, the Gulf of Tonkin Resolution. Policymakers had already decided against the wishes of the electorate, and that decision would have led us to all-out war one way or another. Ray McGovern, a former CIA analyst and later a harsh critic of the agency, described the escalation to war in Vietnam this way. Hold on, guys. During the summer of '64, President Johnson and the joint chiefs of staff, were eager to widen the war in Vietnam. They stepped up sabotage and hit-and-run attacks on the coast of North Vietnam. Those of us in intelligence, not to mention President Lyndon Johnson, Defense Secretary Robert McNamara, and National Security Advisor McGeorge Bundy, all knew full well that the evidence of any armed attack on the evening of August 4th, 1964, the so-called Second Tonkin Gulf incident, was highly dubious. But it fits the President's purposes, so they lent a hand to facilitate escalation of the war. In Bamford's words, the Joint Chiefs of Staff had become a sewer of deceit, with Operation Northwoods and other unconscionable escapades to their credit. Then Under-Secretary of State George Bull commented, there was a feeling that if the destroyer got into some trouble, that this would provide the provocation we needed. Here we have two concepts that should be familiar by now. One, the tactic of blaming a non-existent attack on an enemy and using it as a pretext, and two, provoking a real attack and using that as a pretext. Although Kissinger disingenuously pins these tactics of manipulation on the puppets who sign off on them, at least he admits they are real. Defending Johnson's deceptive pretext for invading Vietnam, Kissinger informs his readers that FDR did the same thing during World War II. Neither Johnson's tactics nor his candor was significantly different from Franklin Delano Roosevelt's when he had edged America towards the involvement in the Second World War. For example, Roosevelt's not altogether candid account of the torpedoing of the destroyer Greer, the pretext for engaging America in a naval war in the Atlantic. Both presidents were prepared to put their country's military forces in harm's way and to respond should harm indeed befall them, as was likely. In each case, the ultimate decision to enter the war was based on considerations which went far beyond the immediate incidents. That's in a book called Diplomacy, page 659. Regarding the Greer, it's the USS Greer, DD-145. Roosevelt had made a clash inevitable when he ordered US ships to report to position of German submarines to the British Navy. The Greer, on the day it was attacked, had spent hours chasing after and reporting the location of an Axis submarine as the British dropped depth charges from the air. This pursuit continued for nearly 3 hours and 30 minutes before the sub fired its first torpedo. The Greer then continued its pursuit for another 5 hours, dropping depth charges of its own, before continuing on its scheduled course. Roosevelt promptly reported the torpedo attack to the public, but he made no mention of the circumstances that preceded it. Instead, he dishonestly presented the incident as an unprovoked act of piracy and used it as a pretext for a radical new shoot-on-sight policy. This, in Kissinger's own words, crossed the line into belligerency. Under this policy, any Axis submarine, whether it attacked a US ship or not, was to be fired on as if it had attacked. Though undeclared and limited, this essentially put America at war against the Axis powers. But limited warfare was never the goal. The network intended to drag the United States fully into World War II, regardless of the Americans' public desire to remain neutral. And while the attack on the Greer moved US policy and opinion in the right direction, the devastating attack on Pearl Harbor sealed the deal. On this topic, Kissinger is a little more cautious about describing FDR's willingness to put US ships and military personnel in harm's way. For instance, he doesn't mention the McCollum Memo, which recommended an 8-part course of action for the United States to take in order to provoke Japan into committing an overt act of war. That's the McCollum Memo. However, he does mention a few of the pressures outlined in the McCollum Memo that were placed on Japan prior to the Pearl Harbor attack. Additionally, he hints at the provocation when he says, "Few understood the nature of the diplomacy that had preceded Japan's attack on Pearl Harbor." It was a measure of the United States' deep-seated isolationism that it had to be bombed at Pearl Harbor before it would enter the war in the Pacific. That's in Diplomacy, page 393. FDR's repeated assurances to the American people that the nation would be kept out of war were nothing more than dual policy. Kissinger praises FDR's cunning when he writes, "America's entry into the war marked the culmination of a great and daring leader's extraordinary diplomatic enterprise. In less than 3 years, Roosevelt had taken his staunchly isolationist people into a global war. Roosevelt had achieved this goal patiently and inexorably, educating his people one step at a time about the necessities before them by initiating hostilities. The Axis power had solved Roosevelt's lingering dilemma about how to move the American people into the war." That's also in Diplomacy, pages 392 and 393. Then it continues, "Just to be clear, there is some misdirection in Kissinger's statement. It wasn't really FDR who maneuvered the staunchly isolationist American people into World War II. That credit more appropriately belongs to the network. FDR, like every president after Woodrow Wilson, served a power much greater than himself. He was little more than the public face of the network's global policy. Having covered the pretext for Vietnam and World War II, this brings us to the surprise attack on the passenger liner Lusitania that served as the pretext for U.S. entry into World War I. And that's the next heading. Sink the Lusitania. Recall from chapter 6 that just prior to World War I, the network concluded that war is the most effective way to alter the life of an entire people. Though the stage for World War I, was already set, the staunchly isolationist tendencies of the United States posed a problem. To overcome this problem, the network set out to gain control of the State Department and the diplomatic machinery of America. It achieved this by bringing Woodrow Wilson to power in 1913. More accurately, the network achieved this by bringing Wilson's advisor, Mendel House, to power. As House's biographer notes, it was House who made the slate for the cabinet, formulated the first policies of the administration, and practically directed the foreign affairs of the United States. If you'll do a little research into Mendel House, you'll soon realize that the word practically does not belong in the preceding sentence. After all, of the right people and instruments were in place, including the network's two newly created funding mechanisms. A secret society known as the Black Hand entered the picture. In June 1914, it ordered the assassination of Archduke Franz Ferdinand, and within a month, World War I was underway. 27 says, Black Hand trained guerrillas and saboteurs and planned political murders. The Black Hand's executive committee was led, more or less, by Colonel Dragutin Dimitrievich. Reference Wikipedia, The Black Hand, Serbia. When Dimitrievich heard that Archduke Franz Ferdinand was planning to visit Sarajevo in June 1914, he sent 3 members of the Young Bosnia group to assassinate him. At this time, Dimitrievich was chief of Serbian military intelligence. Okay, so that was 27. From that point forward, the final steps were clear. Maximize the duration and costs of the war, drag the United States into the conflict by whatever means necessary, and then allow the carefully chosen puppet, Wilson, to sell his vision for a new world order. The first problem the network faced was making sure that the war didn't end too quickly. Alright. Blah blah. It's the top of the hour, guys. If you wanna join, you can do so. If you have Skype, contact me at Solvinur, Solvinur, and I'll see what I can do to drag you in, and you can speak on air or ask a question, or if you want to talk about something else, that's okay too. Alright. The first problem the network faced was making sure that the war didn't end too quickly. As early as February 1915, Wilson's talk of peace was threatening to end hostilities. Worse, to encourage a dialogue between the warring nations, President Wilson sent Mendel House to London and instructed House to bear the President's profound hope that the war could be ended quickly. However, during his trip, House conveyed the exact opposite of the President's sentiments. In his London meeting with Sir Edward Grey, House assured Grey that he had no intention of pushing the issue of peace, and, in so doing, intentionally undermined any prospect of mediation. Professor Nock informs us that, in certain critical instances, Philip Drew seemed to overpower House. His statement to Grey had hardly reflected Wilson's position. To the contrary, House often expressed unabashedly pro-Allied sentiments, and firmly believed that the basis for future peace lay in an Anglo-American entente. He never accurately informed Wilson about this part of his conversation with Grey. While thus gaining the Foreign Secretary's trust, he obviously did not serve his own chief very well. House might have proven himself to Edward Grey an imperialist network insider, but this particular diplomatic maneuver was not sufficient to ensure the continuation of hostilities, let alone ensure that the United States would enter the war. For that, the public would have to be manipulated. Some of them might even have to be put in harm's way. And here is where the British passenger liner Lusitania enters the picture. There isn't enough room to tell the full story here, but suffice to say the case of Lusitania was a damn dirty business. 30. And at 30 it says, Lord Mersey was charged with determining the facts surrounding the sinking of the Lusitania. Under pressure, he issued the report that was expected of him. Wow. But refused compensation and requested that he no longer be called upon to administer His Majesty's justice. His final statement on the affair was, "The Lusitania case was a damn dirty business," as quoted in The Creature from Jekyll Island, page 255. Considering the following a short summary. For a more thorough account, I highly recommend that you read Chapter 12 of The Creature from Jekyll Island. Let's begin with the fact that although the Lusitania was considered a luxury passenger liner, its design specifications were drawn up by British Admiralty. Thanks, Tom. Did you see that movie, by the way? If you did, let me know what you thought of it. And we were talking about time, remember? Yeah. Let's begin with the fact that although the Lusitania was considered a luxury passenger liner, its design specifications were drawn up by the British Admiralty. This enabled the British to easily convert her into a ship of war. In 1913, after adding armor and some other modifications, the British did exactly that. Unbeknownst to her passengers, the ship was then entered into the Admiralty Fleet Register as an armed auxiliary cruiser. Despite US neutrality and the risk to those aboard, the Lusitania became one of the most important carriers of war materials, including munitions, from the United States to England. On March 8, 1915, the captain of the Lusitania turned in his resignation. He was no longer willing to carry the responsibility of mixing passengers with munitions. That's in The Creature from Jekyll Island, page 247. Winston Churchill unlike the captain of the Lusitania, had absolutely no problem mixing passengers with munitions. In fact, the careless mixing of passengers, especially American passengers, with war materials could prove very useful politically. For instance, in the event that Germans attacked a passenger liner with men, women and children aboard, American men, women and children, the beneficial effect on American public opinion would be swift and unanimous. After a handful of stern government condemnations and well-orchestrated media campaign, it would be easy to shame the isolationists into silence while moving the United States toward entering the war. Much like FDR's policy with the Greer, Churchill's orders to load munitions onto passenger ships made a clash at sea inevitable. But this wasn't the only way to provoke a politically useful attack. To increase the likelihood of innocent civilian casualties, Churchill and ordered British merchant ships to ram German subs if they attempted to stop and search them for contraband. Yeah. This made it impossible for Germany to observe the long-established cruiser rules. Under the cruiser rules, an unarmed merchant vessel would not be sunk until the crew and passengers were safely evacuated from the ship. With Churchill's new policy in place, German submarines could no longer come to the surface and were more apt to sink ships without warning. As the following quote from Churchill demonstrates, this was his intention from the start. The first British counter-move made on my responsibility was to deter the German from surface attack. The submerged U-boat had to rely increasingly on underwater attack, and thus ran the greater risk of mistaking neutral for British ships and drowning neutral crews, and thus embroiling Germany with other great powers. And yet, even these measures proved insufficient to bring about the Lusitania's demise. It wasn't until the ship was intentionally sent into hostile waters at reduced speed and with her military escort withdrawn that Churchill and the network he served secured their pretext. Griffin writes, In the map room of the British Admiralty, Churchill watched the play unfold and coldly called the shots. Small discs marked the places where the two ships had been torpedoed the day before. A circle indicated the area within which the U-boat must still be operating. A larger disc represented the Lusitania's traveling at 19 knots directly into the circle. Commander Joseph Kenworthy, who previously had been called upon by Churchill to submit a paper on what would be the political result of an ocean liner being sunk with American passengers aboard, left the room in disgust. Colonel House was in England at that time, and on the day of the sinking, Sir Edward Grey asked him, "What will America do if the Germans sink an ocean liner with American passengers on board?" As recorded in House's diaries, he replied, "I told him if this were done, a flame of indignation would sweep America, which would in itself probably carry us into the war." King George also brought up the subject and was even more specific about the possible target. He asked, "Suppose they should sink the Lusitania with American passengers on board?" Approximately 4 hours later, a torpedo sent the Lusitania to the bottom of the ocean. Of its 1,959 passengers, 1,198 lost their lives. Nearly all of the U.S. citizens aboard, 128 of 139, were killed. Predictably, House immediately seized the opportunity to stoke the flame of indignation while cynically appealing to the moral implication of continued U.S. neutrality. From England, Colonel House sent a telegram to President Wilson. It became the genesis of thousands of newspaper editorials across the land. He said piously, "America has come to the parting of ways, when she must determine whether she stands for civilized or uncivilized warfare." Ridiculous. We can no longer remain neutral spectators. Our action in this crisis will determine how far we may influence a settlement for the lasting good of humanity. Our position amongst nations is being assessed by mankind. In another telegram 2 days later, House reveals himself as the master psychopolitician playing on Wilson's ego like a violinist stroking the strings of a Stradivarius. He wrote, "If, unhappily, it is necessary to go to war, I hope you will give the world an exhibition of American efficiency that will be a lesson for a century or more. It is generally believed throughout Europe that we are so unprepared that our entering would make but little difference. In the event of war, we should accelerate the manufacture of munitions to such an extent that we could supply not only ourselves, but the Allies, and so quickly that the world would be astounded." That's from Tragedy and Hope. There's more. Regarding propaganda efforts overseas, quickly adds, "The propaganda agencies made full use of the occasion. The Times of London announced that 4/5 of her passengers were citizens of the United States. The British manufactured and distributed a medal which they pretended had been awarded to the submarine crew by the German government. A French paper published a picture of the crowd in Berlin at the outbreak of war in 1914 as a picture of Germans rejoicing at the news of the sinking of the Lusitania." The end of this story holds no surprises. Less than a year later, in cooperation with House and Sir Edward Grey, President Wilson signed off on a scheme that would drag the United States into World War I. The President did this without the knowledge of the United States Senate and, of course, without the knowledge of the American people. He then proceeded to campaign for his re-election under the slogan, "He kept us out of the war," patiently waiting until he'd secured his second term before entering World War I in April 1917. The moment Wilson declared war, vast amounts of money began flowing directly into the network's coffers. Adjusted for inflation, the total cost to the United States from 1917 to 1919 would equal more than $500 billion today. This war to end all wars not only buried the United States in debt, it increased the network's financial leverage and direct proportion to that debt. 38. Recall from Chapter 6. As payments on mounting debt create greater and greater shortfalls, and as annual spending continues to increase unabated, larger and more frequent loans become necessary to bridge the gap. This accelerates the rate at which the national debt grows. Before long, even powerful nations will find themselves utterly dependent on constant flow of newly borrowed funds to cover their expenses. The network is always happy to supply those funds with more debt money that they create out of thin air. But there were additional profits as well. Competing empires were destroyed, the isolationist tendency of the United States were subverted, and the initial framework for a new world order took shape. None of this happened by chance. Each and every step was carefully planned to yield the desired result. And there you see how a handful of false and designing men can manipulate entire nations and alter the history of the world. Brings us to the next heading. A century of deception, theft, and violence. We've covered an awful lot of ground in the pages of this short book, from the origins of the network's secret society to its sovereignty destruction project and ultimate recovery of the United States of America in 1939. Recall from 39, referencing the stated goal of the network founder Cecil Rhodes as quoted in the Anglo-American establishment. From the blatant fraud of its primary funding mechanisms to its use of ruthless dictators, dual policies and false flag operations. What can be said of these men who've achieved so much at the expense of so many? Have they earned the power that they possess? Have they earned the consequences of allowing them to dominate us? That should be, have we earned? The network believes that the key to controlling the world lies in the application of secret political and economic influence, and secret control of journalistic, educational, and propaganda agencies. 41 says the the Anglo-American establishment. Page 49. Based on their impressive list of global accomplishments, it certainly appears as if they are right. But what happens if their secret influence and tactics are exposed for all to see? Could they continue to get away with their crimes? Could they continue to manipulate us into wars, bury us beneath inescapable debt, and con us into surrendering our sovereignty? The answer, by their own estimation, is no. When what they're doing and how they're doing it becomes widely known, the foundation on which their success is built crumbles beneath them. Fortunately, this means that the most important work we can do is also the easiest. To the extent we expose the origin and purposes of their instruments, their tried and true tactics of manipulation, and their immoral belief that only might determines what's right, we destroy the illusion of legitimacy that they depend on. So long as we are gaining and spreading awareness, they, by default, are losing power. This is where we must begin. This is the first step towards destroying their system. So please, reach out to new people regularly and share information that exposes what a network is and how it operates. When you encounter individuals who either refuse to look at the facts or who minimize the significance of what's presented, do not take it personally. If they attack you, do not take it personally. In most cases, they are simply defending their worldview. It has nothing to do with you. Simply move on and know that every single person that is exposed to this information, even those who initially resist, could become an ally down the road. The same cannot be said of those who are never exposed to the truth. That's it, guys, for chapter 9, which was the last chapter. Then there's final thoughts and recommended reading. In May 2012, I began... Hold on, guys. Deze ook. Even naar beneden. Okay. In May 2012, I began sorting through and organizing the reference material for this book. After a couple of months of narrowing my choices, I came to a reasonable, depressing conclusion. There was absolutely no way I could adequately condense Quigley's work into just a couple of 100 pages. Okay. Blah, blah, blah. Let's see, open this one, contacts, this one, and then there we go. This should work. Yeah.
Hey, Walter.
Good day, Mr. Vince. How are you?
Doing good. Doing good. Yeah, I enjoyed the reading. Good job and good timing, too. I guess I'll be bugging out here first this next week, right? Going to do a river trip. And
Sorry, what was that last?
fixing to bug out and do a little camping and float down the river. It's about a 10-mile stretch.
Cool.
I changed rivers. The one I wanted to go on is not carrying enough water, and it would be a lot of dragging. This one I can float all the way. There's a few little rapids in it, nothing big. I mean, just kind of across the shoals of some shallow water. So ought to be real fun. I could set in down farther, but and it'd be all smooth water. But hey, what's the fun in no adventure, right?
Yeah.
So I went yesterday, went exploring, and found I'll set in at the last low water crossing there, and like I said, it's about 10 miles down to Shirley, and I've got my swinging camp. It floats and swings. It swings from the trees. It's my bed, and it's also my raft to ferry my goods down the river. Be a lot of fun. So yeah, I've been these last few months I've been posting you over for the redirect from Real Liberty Media.
Cool.
And it's the channel that brings you right back over here to the chat and to the listen box right here. at ucy.tv. For those of you now listening, we got a lot of good folks over there at Real Liberty Media. It really enjoys your broadcast, Walter. So you'll need to get with Grim and ask him to add you to the IRC bar, and it's real easy. You just type that in, join /join IRC bar, all in capital except for the last AR. Anyways, he can hook you up on that. You can post your show there to redirect the listeners there and the chatters over here to UCY every Saturday. So in case anybody wakes up and forgets that you're playing, then they can come over here to listen.
I have no clue what that is.
Just get with Grim or ask him when you can get time. It's real easy to do, real simple. I'm a technotard, so he can explain it to you in probably 30 words or less.
Huh.
That way, yeah. So, yeah, we keep going and keep your postings over at Freedom's Network. There's a forum over there I created, which now your next topic will need to be updated. So,
yeah, I'll let you know as soon as possible.
I'm fixing to be gone for a little while.
Yeah, I think it's going to be just the Solvinur event, though, for I don't know how long. But how do you plan on getting back up the river?
I'll disembark at a extraction port down there in town. If I don't decide to keep on going down to Poe Ranch from there, which there's roads that go down and lead to certain points on the river. But, it is so beautiful. This is the one I'd wanted to, originally I was going to walk off. I can take off in 3 directions from the mountain. I'm here because of the big loop of the river, and hit that. And it's quite a ways. I was going to do a simulated bug out there and walk off, but then I came up with this floating device, which is pretty awesome. So, instead of having to go very, very lightly, I'll still be traveling kind of light as far as poundage-wise, but enough that it'll float on the river.
So it's like a vacation for you.
Yeah, and a reconnect. Yeah, so exiting this side of the mic for a while, and just kind of recharge and start going back to learning again. And I've started at simple grade school grammar. So I'll be working on learning. And when I do come back to air, I'll want to come back in a capacity of as an assistant again to other folks and what they're working on. Chuck Ocelli, you definitely want to work with him. There's some guests I'd like to bring together with him, but just a little while off. Rounding the Edge, previewed last night, this kind of a little taste. It was an honest drunk production, so I kind of thought we'd have a little fun with the launch party, but perhaps next year that might be ready. There'll be a lot of pre-recorded, pre-production work there, and segmented series, and probably produce that for 1 year. So, yeah, I just finished up This Is No Time for Rational Thinking, and that was of 26.
Are you going to be staying co-hosting with...
No, that's over. We finished that up a week ago Friday.
Oh?
And, yeah, last night was kind of
no more Flash?
Yeah, he's on the dork table. He's coming up today.
Yes, of course. When my radio is finished at RLM, that's channel 3, right?
Channel 3, correct.
Yep. There's, what's the name again?
The dork table, and Grammy Mary's going to be on it, and Circle Line.
Cool, yes, the dork table. Yeah, she got rid of the ocean, so sound should be good.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, you've been I'm going to be missing being a part here Saturdays, but like I said, I'm fixing to go with traveling, and this is the first leg. Just kind of stepping out here and getting my feet wet, literally. And sitting here, it's just caused a lot of entropy, so I need to get out and start moving and actually adding to my life that all this great amount of information that I know and apply it. So, yeah, without application, it's little good to know anything, I'd say. The wisdom fails.
Yeah.
I learned that from you, by the way. You've been a
Oh,
great. Jules is another one of the best teachers, and Hal behind the woodshed. So,
yeah.
my radio has not been me being. I'm not a teacher, so um, I just kind of exploring along and looking at things, and appreciate everybody that's come along and been a part of it all these last about 3 years. Been really fun, and but I'll be back, and certainly be dropping in and updating my travels. So
Cool.
this, I look to, I guess, make this Western journey. It's been on my mind. Now, tomorrow, Chris J. right here, UCY.TV, 9 p.m. Eastern on Voice of Rebellion. Thomas Robert Lockevar Stewart's going to be a guest, and they'll have the mic. I'll be in the background. I'll be pop in just a little bit, but they're going to talk about Bunkerville and the situation up in Oregon.
Mm-hmm.
Thomas, he gets it. He knows all about the subversion of the amendments of the Constitution and all that. Pretty sharp guy. I've had him on as my guest a few times. I met him out there in Bunkerville. We spent a lot of time together talking. I can vouch for this man's character for certain. We might have just a little bit of different opinions as far as specifics here and there, but in the overall scheme of it, he and I would say pretty much have an understanding of how everybody here listening, we get it, Sometimes it's frustrating, and sometimes, we all here even get it just a little bit differently, so that really doesn't matter, the differences, as far as making our way forward. That we have to do. It's a concerted effort, and the infighting, it exists all the time. And
Yeah.
Right here, we pretty much do a pretty good job of getting along, I'd say.
Yeah. There's also this infighting that you mentioned reminds me again. I was talking to somebody in the Tragedy and Hope chat, and there it came up also. Do you remember this piece that Cass Sunstein wrote? And he called us conspiracy theorists, that we make epistemological cartoons, and that these groups should be infiltrated and chats should be infiltrated. Remember that?
No, I do not recall specific.
Oh yeah, it was. There was months and months of coverage on it on the underground media. And Cass Sunstein, look it up. It's a nice article he wrote, which you can tear apart. Yeah.
Well, by having tried to always approach with the trivium,
Yeah.
in thinking, it's very easy to see through false logic that people use. And of course, I guess we still, even the best of those that are trying to work this, they experience the, not seeing. It's real hard to edit your own post. In other words, So certainly I'm guilty, but as long as I think we owe it to ourselves, especially if we're speaking publicly, to have an accountability and responsibility. So I take it pretty serious. I like to cut up, so I don't know how I can say I take it pretty serious, especially if you listen to last night's broadcast. It was an honest drunk production. I haven't done drunk radio in a long time, and I thought it'd be fun to have a launch party for Rounding the Edge, which will be the next series that I'll be working on. Try to work it through all that, the grammar, logic, and rhetoric. And
Yeah, did you hear Gino Denning on rhetoric anytime?
yeah, I've listened to all of those folks.
You did?
Well, I've listened to specifically a lot of those big names. Yeah, Gino Denning. Yeah, he kind of came down on the nonviolent communication thing at one point in time.
Did he?
Yeah, him and another guy was knocking. I think Daryl.
Maybe you're mistaken. That was Jan Irvin, right?
Okay, maybe you're right. See,
Yeah.
I don't have the right who's here, do I? But anyways, yeah, there's a lot of those names that, quite honestly, the bigger the name, the less likely I am to listen to, or at least give them a.
Okay, well, Gino Denning is kind of like the source, more or less, of it all, because he taught Jan Irvin, and Jan Irvin, through him, and later also Tragedy and Hope, it became popular, right?
Yeah, but see, they don't know.
So, but it came from him, and he has been also at the School Sucks podcast. You probably heard of that.
Yep.
And the number 245, there's also Gino Denning, and it's been a while because he's now at number 400 something. But there he explains about rhetoric, and it's very interesting. He explains how you can divide the words that you use into like three. What is it? Let me check here on the page, because I should have it open. Branches, and there's the judicial, the deliberative, and the epideiectic or something, and it sounds pretty difficult, right? But judicial means nothing but past, or actually judicial is in the past. And the purposes are to accuse or defend. And the deliberative is in the future, is to exhort or dissuade. And the epideiectic is in the present. The purpose is to praise or blame. But so there are three different places from which you can start your sentences, right? You can start in the past and look at what happened, or you can start now and look at what is, or you can start in the future and talk about maybe what should be, right? Something like that. So those are the three branches of oratory, as they are called. And he explains them very good.
That was a good explanation, and that's where I'm going back. See, it's been some months now since I spent continual time in a close examination of the trivium.
Yeah, me too, because I've been trying to find some interesting stuff that I can share on the radio about rhetoric, but it's pretty hard to find.
Yeah,
it's pretty hard to find.
Quite honestly. Some might laugh, but I'm actually starting with grade school grammar and proper sentence structure, punctuation, and so forth.
Yeah, I'm still looking at that video you posted, that 5-hour one with the green-like creature with the book grammar.
Yeah, I've
heard that one. Yeah, I'm still only 1 hour into it. It's not easy.
No. And
that's just the basics, right?
Yes. So I am a complete idiot, I admit it.
Yeah, me too. Yeah.
Yeah. I put them on and listen to them and often fall asleep. So I play them over and over. There's one I really like. It's a kid's school for children, written in the early 1900s, and I would actually like to give that a reading myself. I would. For practice, if nothing else, read. And when we speak, I've got all these stringers, the andums,
Yeah.
I guess maybe a little pause in air. It's like it's almost a cardinal sin to have any non-speaking going on when you're on radio. So umpty-dumpty,
Yeah.
A lot of fun. But the inflection in our tone and where you emphasize what word and so forth brings importance.
Yeah. What I found useful, and I thought, well, this is actually it almost comes natural, is what was said about making sentences that the first word and the last word are the places for the most important words.
Not necessarily.
Ah, okay.
Not necessarily. Yeah. That's explained. Oh, one of those books. I believe the one that you were just talking about.
Uh-huh. Yeah, it's a book, but it's an audio version that I'm listening to. Yeah.
There, I dropped that over at Real Liberty Media too. I dropped that at UCY.tv in the chat.
Cool. Yeah, I'll check it out later.
It's a kid's book, but it is, for me, well, like Nathan Fraser talks about, delivering or giving your delivery in a story. So to be able to present information with a story is really awesome. And even though it's a kid's book, if adults, as they say in there, they like it too.
Huh.
I vocalized my comas. No, my commas. Says Beth C.
Yeah, too many ahs, she says.
Yeah. Huh. That's right. I will be working on talking more better. Or at least have a more better word in my mouth to say, as Hal would say. That's my morning routine is first thing in the morning is popping on Hal every weekday morning. Re-listen. So, yeah, it'll kind of be like a withdrawal from drugs, perhaps, being out there totally disconnected. Won't even have cell service down in there. But I got a little solar battery pack that I'll be bringing with me and shooting some vids on the river. I'm going to try to kind of mount my one camera phone up there where as I do some running down some rapids and stuff. They're not huge rapids. They're like little shoals with water running over it real fast. But it ought to be super fun. I'm going to float down and I'll start with one camp and find me another and hang out for a little while and then float on down to town. But this is going to be fun. I'm going to miss being on radio though.
You're gonna be alone?
Yeah, all by myself.
How long?
A week's trip be the first one.
A week. Okay.
I'm also I'll be I ain't got the plans worked out yet, but they'll come together. Everything's been just seems to be real good timing for me these days, and that's what I waited on, or else I'd have been if I'd have gone up to the Great Northwest right there, I'd be up there in federal custody for having gone to cover that event up there, the sit-in, where they're holding people now without bail. Well, I think it's a sad place that we allowed these people that are running amok in our country and calling themselves leaders. Now we're voting for people like Trump or Hillary, and what a joke! A joke! A criminal and a criminal, and one's a buffoon, which makes the other criminal look like the better bet. You can insert either one in either place right there, and it'll be just as fitting.
Yeah, you thought it wouldn't get any worse, right? But there you go.
I did I did a real funny Latinos for Trump production last night, and oh, I laugh now thinking about it. I don't even know if I want to try to reduplicate it now. But it's rounding the edge over there at Real Liberty Media on the YouTube if you want to check that out. It's somewhere in there anyways. Yeah,
Latinos for Trump. That sounds really funny.
See, I like you, Senor Trump, too much. He give me some work and we building these walls. It's very good for Mexicanos. And he don't like it, the marijuana. It's very bad, making us and our soul brothers were raping white women. So, you see, Senor Trump, he likes us Mexicans too much. And my sister, she no more has to go prostitute. Because she can work and bringing water to the Mexicanos, but building the wall.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, hey, if you're a Mexican, vote for Trump. Hi, Bill.
Hey, Shirley is also welcome.
Yeah, that's Bill, Miss Bill. Shirley, you just.
The new and improved version.
She's got a cool blogcaster too, Honey Radiance. No, wait, sorry. Well, Radiant Blogspot.
I say it correctly now.
Did I say it correctly?
No, not yet.
Help, Bill. I've got it started. I'll have to go way down here. Let me just go get it, and I'll bring the link over. It's way down here. I got like 1 million stars. How long it'll take me to find it?
Yep. I think I lost mine. Usually I have like way too many tabs open, but yours seems to be closed.
I found it. Spherical Radiance Blogspot. Sorry.
Spherical Radiance blogspot.com.
Here, I'm dropping it in chat. Blogspot.
There you go.
All right, sphericalradiance.blogspot.com.
There you go.
And I'll take it over.
Nice site. There's lots of information there.
Yes, and she's a friend of UCY and Real Liberty Media, and does a lot of sharing and promoting of both sites and the broadcasts.
Nice work there, Shirley.
Yes, thank you, Miss Bell. There it is. She got it too.
Who is really mad?
Let me put some andums in there for you, and you know. So what are you going to do? What have you decided for next week? Which direction to run?
I haven't decided yet. Next week, nope. I was thinking of trying to find some more rhetoric stuff, but it's difficult.
Well, whatever it will be, when I get back, I'll definitely be catching up on the YouTube, on the archive on UCY TV user. Find out if you're listening downstream. There is a bunch of playlists of all the broadcasts from UCY.tv. It's a wealth of information. Jules has compiled the best location for all that matters. That's anywhere. You won't find anything better. I guarantee you.
Yeah, there's a lot of variation in the programming. Oh, I shouldn't say programming.
Just as long as you
The
don't
content available at UCY, there's stuff for scientific things, like Jules does a lot, right? There's anti-political things. There's me, like more going into philosophy, history, mythology. And there's the whales, of course. Yeah.
And entertainment with the boys from New York, Continual Connection. It's more of a social type of related look, I guess, of society today, which is also very interesting.
And at UCY, there's also the videos that you can watch. They are usually very short and give you an idea of what most people are being bombarded with at the moment.
That comes from Pigmine.
Pigmine, yes.
And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to go jump over to UCY on the YouTube there.
They kind of gather the news bits from here and there and then paste that together. Yeah.
Let me get a playlist. I'll grab that Pigmine. Yeah, this is all the headline news, and just really rolls it out and lays it out. That's quite a compilation right there.
Yep.
And they attack Pigmine all the time too, so he has to have several
They
channels.
do? For what? Then it's usually mainstream media stuff that's there, right?
They'll hit him with copyrights just to screw up his...
Oh, like that.
Mm-hmm.
Huh. I thought that, if it's in the mainstream media, then that everybody can, repeat that, but apparently not.
Sometimes it depends on their content, too. I mean, they would, you know, if they kind of get something that they're not want people to keep hearing again.
Aren't you supposed to repeat that, right? That's what they want. They want you to talk about that at the water cooler at your office, right?
Yeah. There it is. I dropped it over there in the chat rooms. Rolls it right out. Also, Real Liberty Media has a daily newspaper put out that pulls feeds in. Check that out. Okay, yeah, here comes the dork table here in about 5 minutes. There's Hans. And also, kind of accidentally cross-promoting, Govern America with Darren Weeks, UCY.tv is
Yep.
next.
Grammy Mary is there. Can also be heard on Real Liberty Media with the rocket chair.
Yep, she always gives you shouts out Wednesdays and Fridays.
Yeah, like reading the people from the chat, right?
Yeah, and
I always like to do that too.
yeah, promoting your show for here at UCY for Saturday mornings.
Yeah, I heard Grimner do that too, so I gave it back. Friday, 11, what was it, EST?
Hey, look, there's an American, Larkin, Texas. He's a pretty good guy. I think you've spoken with him before, have you not?
Numerican, yeah, once or twice, but I have no clue really who he is.
So, he is the on-air guest with Darren Weeks today. That's pretty good. I like that. Yeah, he's coming up next.
Okay.
So, hey, thanks for that, American, for posting that information.
Lark in Texas will be on-air guest at Darren Weeks today. That's, when if you stay tuned to UCY, you will hear Darren Weeks.
2 minutes. I'm almost off air. Well, I'll be out in a minute. All right, thanks, brother.
All right, Vince.
You have me. I'm going to jump off here and attend to things here.
Thanks for joining.
All right, brother.
And make sure you stay safe while on that river, okay?
Right on. I'm going to bring some videos back. It'll be fun.
Okie-doke.
We'll see you all later right here where we're at. Love and peace, y'all.
See you later. All right, guys. So, I don't know, final thoughts, if we're going to do that next week. There's a whole list of books and recommended reading here. Bonus material. There's also not that much. So I think we're done with this. So I don't know what we'll be doing next week. Thanks a lot, Joe, for letting me read this. Get it at stopthelie.com. So before the bell rings, I want to thank everybody in the chat for listening. Captain Ringo, Dan, Grump, Hopper, Juana Taco, Jules, Meticluth, Murbly, Numerican, Otto, Surely You Jest, Tomato, Vince, and two anons. So that's it for me this week. And I would say to you all, stay safe. If you're in a dangerous area regarding bugs, don't let them bite you. Yeah. And if you're into going into traffic, this is the attitude that I usually have, is all people are idiots. You know, you have to be so careful driving around these days. Because people act like idiots sometimes on the road, you know, and you just have to be prepared to react in the correct way. So always beware. It's pretty dangerous out there. So thanks a lot for listening. I'll be back next week. Take care, y'all.
An inside job? How dare you? How dare you?
to create, so to say, mass-produced models of human beings arranged in some kind of a